The number of times the word Bazball has been used is incredulous, and the expressions have changed over the course of the test series between India and England. It all started with England puffing up their chests and everyone talking of England's Bazball putting pressure on the Indian cricket team and how that contest would really play out. And though it all started well for the visitors, the hosts have somehow cracked the code in terms of the kind of pitches to prepare that will successfully counter and negate the English tactics, resulting in the 2-1 lead that we see now. And this lack of foresight or skills to readapt and change tack by the England squad is getting some heavy criticism now. Former England cricketers are all up in arms, and it's not just the on-field demeanour or the lack of it that is the cause for concern. Former England captains have lashed out at some of the irresponsible comments and statements that this English side has been making. We'll start with one that is currently in the eye of the storm. Ben Duckett, who scored 100 himself, may have been the only centurion here in the test and probably did most of the sensible batting, but clearly did not put any sense into his words at the press conference when asked about young Yashasvi Jaiswal's brilliant knock. Instead of applauding the opponent's intent and talent, this is what he chose to say.
When you see players from the opposition playing like that, it almost feels like we should take some credit that they are playing differently than how other people play test cricket.
Well, he just said that England has to take credit for the way a young batter in the opposite ranks completely outperformed the entire English side put together. Not the most wise thing to say, almost seeming like the patent of aggression is England's to own, and there haven't been many examples in India, is what that sort of amounted to. Well, this is not the wisest thing to say, especially when England ended up losing the test the day after he said this. One of England's greatest cricketers and someone who is a super observer of the game was quick to call Duckett out and the England seniors for a statement like this even being uttered.
The comment on Jaiswal that he has learned from us. I am going to touch on that. He has not learned from you. He has learned from his upbringing and all the hard yards he has put in while growing up. He has learned from the IPL. If anything, I would look at him and learn from him.
Nasser's words cuts through with so much severity. He harshly puts Duckett and England in its place and has enough knowledge about the youngster in question here, Yashasvi Jaiswal, to say that it is his hard work that has got him here. And if there is some learning that has to happen, then England needs to learn from Jaiswal and the way he batted. A thought that is even mirrored by another former England cricketer.
They need to look at the way Jaiswal and Shubman Gill played on day 3. They soaked up the pressure for 30 or 40 balls and then they started to get boundaries. This is what test batting is all about. India have scored 875 runs in 228.5 overs. No one can tell me it's been boring watching India bat here.
But Nasser Hussain, more importantly, also goes on to point out a larger concern that he senses in the English dressing room. First, let's take a look at what he said.
I hope they are going back into their room with self-introspection. I can look at that lad and learn from him. Otherwise, it becomes a cult, doesn't it? At times, Bazball has been described as a cult where you cannot criticize either within or externally. Even in this regime, there is room for learning and improving.
He's basically calling this current England squad out on their whole Bazball approach. He basically says that they don't seem to be learning from their missteps, not adapting. He calls it a cult, meaning there are set rules and no one can really breach it or question it. Clearly, those rules are not working and are only confusing some of the players further. Michael Vaughan, as we know, has lambasted the English side in the past, saying this defeat has exposed their method and that they needed to pick when to be aggressive.
This was the worst defeat under Stokes and Brendan McCullum, and one that exposed their method. They cannot take the aggressive way at every opportunity. They have to pick their moments.
And when the criticism comes from someone who has just left the setup, who has captained them, then it's sure to hit home. Alistair Cook was also not too pleased either with the way the English team has gone about their cricket, making the statements that they would chase down any target, but not really following up the talk with the walk. Michael Vaughan, in fact, continued to be more scathing. He says clearly something has given and course correction is definitely needed.
This England team are bent on doing things their way and saving Test cricket, but ultimately they have to be better than that now. They did not win in New Zealand. They did not win the Ashes, and if they carry on like this, they are going to lose in India.
Clearly, there's a lot of anger, and because of a few reasons. One, England seem to be caught between what the situation demands and what their method really should be, and following it, about their aggressive approach. And two, they do not wish to change their tactics or their strategy. They just want to continue doing what they are doing and expect the results alone to change and favour them. But this comment on taking credit for Jaiswal's batting was the icing on the cake. Definitely got Nasser Hussain fuming, and why not? England's legacy and their cricketing tradition, their credibility even is on the line. And since the cricket is not helping, these statements certainly are only making it worse.
From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden.
How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on First Post America.